Good morning. The April 10th, 2025 meeting of the Senate Commerce Committee will come to order. This is Senator Putnam Day at the Finance Committee, and we're going to take up the Ag Bill first, I'm told. And so welcome to the committee, and please go ahead on Senate File 2458.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's a great day to talk about agriculture, so thanks for giving us the opportunity to do so. Mr. Chair, as you know, our budget target for this bill was in the negative. It was a cut. Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. So we're dealing with some very severe circumstances that we have, I think, adapted to very well, and we've created a balanced, appropriate, and responsive agricultural budget for you guys to talk about here today. We know that Minnesota's ag community and economy are facing historic challenges. Last year, the median farm income was $22,000. It's a tough time to be a farmer, and this bill is designed to respond to some of the contingencies and issues that are facing Minnesota's agriculture with balance and intent. You'll note, as I mentioned, our budget target was negative, so we did make some cuts, which I think Mr. Olofsson will discuss further later, but just as a sort of high-level discussion of the bill as a whole. We did reduce the resources that go into the urban ag account, which is currently $2 million a year. We cut that fairly substantially to put in other places. Our understanding from the Department of Agriculture is that that grant program is undersubscribed. So we're trying to take advantage of those resources in the best way we can. We had a modest cut to the biofuels incentives and biofuels infrastructure programs. Again, to provide a little bit more resources. And we moved $1.5 million from the Dairy with an Eye program to the Ag Emergency Program. And then we also then cut $3 million from the governor's proposal for green fertilizer support. Now, in terms of how we spent some of the resources that we moved around, we spent a fair amount on farm to school and in creating a new program for local food access to supplement the program that had been run by the federal government. But the bulk of our resources, 30% of this budget, goes directly to ag emergency responses. So 1/3 of the budget goes to grants for poultry producers to install avian influenza prevention measures. And just because I can, I'm going to say the words turkey lasers again. A fair amount of that goes to turkey lasers. It also transfers $1.5 million into the Ag Emergency account and gives the Board of Animal Health a significant operating adjustment. So we've done the things to get Minnesotans and our government ready to respond to the crises that might occur in agriculture. For farmers themselves and the ag economy, we put a fair amount of money into mental health outreach and support for farm safety grants and outreach. As we know, as I was just suggesting, it's a tough time to be a farmer and everyone can use a little bit of help. We put a lot of resources also into wolf and elk depredation payments, which is something that we hear is a significant problem, particularly in northern Minnesota. And then for the sake of all of us, every member of the Senate, we gave Tory his reindeer. That is a thing that I think that helps every member of the Senate and Hemker Zoo. And then we also put some money towards meat inspection. We achieved, Senator Liskey, frankly, did a phenomenal job achieving an agreement in the cottage food territory. And we also put some more resources into Mail-C and the ag educators. So members, that's a kind of high level discussion of what we have in the budget here before us. Mr. Olofsson can walk us through the spreadsheet as well.
Thank you, Senator Putnam. Did you want to deal with the amendments before? Are these your amendments? Do you want to deal with them first, or would you rather do the walkthrough first?
Up to you, Mr. Chair. That's fine. If we'd like to do them now, that's appropriate.
Okay. I don't mind doing the spreadsheet since Mr. Olofsson seems ready to do it, so go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members, for the record, Eric Olofsson, Senate Fiscal Analyst for the Agriculture, Broadband, and Rural Development Committee. In your packets, you should have two agriculture spreadsheets, one shorter change items one, which is the one that I'll walk through. There's also a detailed spreadsheet that walks through every single rider within the Senate File 2458 first engrossment, but just I'll go over the change items only for the committee's sake. So the spreadsheet that I'll be walking through at top left corner, it's a 3-page spreadsheet. Top left corner, Agriculture, Broadband, and Rural Development, 2025 Chair's recommendations as referred to Finance, SF 2458 first engrossment, change items. Top right corner, 4/9/2025, 1:08 p.m. So again, column A, that shows the departments and the specific change item appropriations. Columns B shows the fund from where these change items are coming from. Column C shows the type of appropriation, whether it's direct or statutory. Columns D through F show the governor's recommendations, and columns G through M is what we'll be focusing on today, is the Senate File 2458's Articles 1 and 2. These are the change items from the base funding. So just to give you a broad overview for what the targets this bill received, or the Ag Committee received, for fiscal years 25 through 27, they received a cut or a net savings target of $313,000 to the general fund. And for the 28-29 biennium, or the tails, they received a new spending from the general fund of $2.928 million. And the bill in front of you today meets both of those targets. So starting the walkthrough of the spreadsheet, with the Department of Agriculture, or MDA, we'll start with their Protection Services Division. So on line 7, there's a one-time cut of $50,000 to soil health financial assistance grants of $50,000 in FY26 to the general fund, for a net savings of $50,000 in FY26 to the general fund. On line 8, for wolf compensation, this comes from Senate File 469 from Senator Johnson. There's additional spending from the general fund of $100,000 in the 26-27 biennium and $100,000 in the 28-29 biennium as well. On line 9, for elk crop damage compensation, this also comes from Senate File 469 from Senator Johnson. There's an identical $100,000 from the general fund of additional spending in 26-27 and $100,000 from the general fund in 28-29. Moving to line 10, for the operating adjustment, this comes from the agency's budget bill. The bill in front of you matches the governor's recommendations of additional spending from the general fund of $1.344 million in the 26-27 biennium for an operating adjustment for protection services, and $1.848 million in the 28-29 biennium. Moving on down to line 11, for the climate coordinator position, this was a position that was previously funded but was under the agency Administration and Financial Services Division. This comes from a revised governor's recommendation to move it to the protection services. So while it shows as new spending of $300,000 in 26-27 and $300,000 from the general fund in 28-29, there's an identical reduction within that division that I'll mention later in the walkthrough. On line 12, for meat inspection, there's additional spending from the general fund of $702,000 in the 26-27 biennium and $900,000 from the general fund in the 28-29 biennium. And on line 13, there's just, this comes from the agency's budget bill. It doesn't have any direct impact on the general fund, but there's language alignment relating to PFAS that I just wanted to briefly mention. Moving to the Ag Marketing and Development Division at MDA, on line 16 for Farm Safety, Health, and Wellness. This comes from Senate File 2809 from Senator Kunesh. There's a new spending of $150,000 from the general fund in 26-27 and $100,000 in the tails in 28-29. On line 17, for the green fertilizer program at MDA, this comes from a governor's recommendation. There's a $3 million reduction to that original appropriation of $7 million. So net savings in FY25 of $3 million to the general fund. On line 18, within the GREET program or transfer for farm business management through for the farm business management through mail-see program, this comes from Senate File 1178 from Senator Kupek. There's additional spending of $250,000 in the 26-27 biennium and $250,000 in the 28-29 biennium. On line 19, this is also through the GREET transfer for the Minnesota Agriculture and Rural Leadership, or MARL program. This comes from Senate File 3037 from Senator Dames. There's $150,000 in the 26-27 biennium and $150,000 in the 28-29 biennium. In columns J and M, there should not be brackets there. This is new spending that was allocated there. So my apologies for that little mistake. On line 20, we're moving down to the Biofuels Incentives Grant Reduction Program. There's a reduction to this $3 million per year appropriation of $250,000 per year for a net savings of $500,000 in the 26-27 biennium and $500,000 in the 28-29 biennium. On line 21 for the biofuels infrastructure grant, there's also a reduction for that with net savings of $500,000 in the 26-27 biennium and $500,000 in the 28-29 biennium. On line 22 for the agri-biofuels infrastructure grant, the eligibility for dispensing sites is increased from 10 to 20. This comes from Senate File 881 and 1507, which are Senator Kupek and Senator Dornick. So that doesn't affect the overall appropriation, but just the eligibility. On line 23 for the agri, farm to school, and early care for Senator, this comes from Senate File 1559 from Senator Gustafson. There's additional spending to the program of $300,000 from the general fund in 26-27 and $300,000 from the general fund in 28-29. Moving on down to line 24, this is the reduction to the urban agriculture program within Agri. So there's a net reduction to this program, as Senator Putnam mentioned before it was $2 million per year. This reduces it by $925,000 each fiscal year in 26-27 for savings of $1.85 million to the general fund in 26-27 and savings of $1.75 million in 28-29 to the general fund. On line 25, from the agency's budget bill, the eligibility is expanded for the urban ag program. Again, this doesn't affect the appropriation amount, but just expands how the money can be used. On line 26, the Good Food Access Program is updated to now be the Food Retail Improvement and Development Program. This is also a governor's recommendation. No direct impact on the general fund. On line 27, for the Agri Protect grant specified for avian influenza, this idea comes from a similar bill from Senate File 1839 from Senator Putnam. There's $250,000 one time from the general fund in FY26. Moving on down to line 29, this is the dairy with an I reduction of the original $4 million appropriation. This reduces it by $1.5 million for a net savings of $1.5 million to the general fund. Okay. On lines 30 and 31, we're extending FY22 and FY23 agri appropriations to be available until FY29, and this otherwise $1.5 million is estimated to cancel to the general fund in FY26 and in FY26. So you see that's estimated $1.5 million in 26, and then the reallocation of that $1.5 million with extended availability. On lines 32, the FY25 agri appropriations, this is a technical fix from the revised governor's rec to make sure the extended availability is available for the entire FY25 agri appropriation. Without this technical fix, without this extension, MDA estimates $8.2 million would cancel to the general fund. So this extends the appropriation through fiscal year 27. So for the entire agri appropriation. So you see the $8.2 million that would otherwise cancel and then reappropriated to follow the new budget rules. And on line 34 for the agri livestock investment grant, no direct costs to the general fund, but it just expands what the livestock investment grant can be used for. This comes from the governor's recommendation. So moving to the admin and financial assistance division at MDA. On line 37 for Male C grants or the Minnesota Ag Education Leadership Council. This comes from Senate File 296 from Senator Dames. There's $100,000 from the general fund in 26-27 and $100,000 from the general fund in 28-29. On line 38 for the Minnesota Poultry Association from Senate File 290-58 from Senator Frentz, there's $2,000 one time in FY26. On line 39 for the Minnesota Livestock Breeders, Senate File 1805 from Senator Dames, there's $36,000 one time in FY 26-27. Moving to page 2 of the spreadsheet. For the Northern Crops Institute from Senate File 1770 from Senator Kupek, there's $60,000 one time from the general fund in 26-27. For the Minnesota State Horticultural Society from Senate File 2217, 7 from Senator Seeberger. There's 70,000 one time from the general fund in 26-27. On line 42 for the Center for Rural Policy and Development, there's 150,000 one time from the general fund in 26-27. On line 43 for the Minnesota Turf Seed Council from Senate File 2137 from Senator Johnson, there's 80,000 one time in fiscal years 26-27. On line 44 for Green Seam from Senate File 1121 from Senator Frentz, there's 100,000 one time in 26-27. On line 45, there's a carve out within Second Harvest Heartland that they can use up to $500,000 each fiscal year to purchase food from the Good Acre. So it's up to 500,000, up to 1 million in 26-27, and up to 1 million in 28-29 of the 1.7 million each fiscal year appropriation to Second Harvest Heartland. On line 46, it's the operating adjustment for the Administration and Financial Services Division at MDA. So $340,000 from the general fund in 26-27, and $406,000 in 28-29. On line 47, here's where the climate coordinator position appropriation used to be. So here's that net savings that matches in protection services of the $300,000 in 26-27 and $300,000 in 28-29 to the general fund. On line 48 for the new local food purchasing assistance program, this comes from Senate File 2430 from Senator Kunesh. There's $500,000 from the general fund in 26-27 and $500,000 in 28-29. On line 49 for the 4R fertilizer management report, this comes from an amendment that we received on last Friday. There's $50,000 in FY26 one time for this report. And then on line 50 for the agriculture emergency account transfer, this comes from a revised governor's rec. The Senate, the chair recommends 1.5 million in fiscal years 25 to be transferred. This matches the 1.5 million from the reduction from dairy with an I. So on line 51 for the total general fund impact to MDA, in column G, you can see a net savings of $3 million from that green fertilizer reduction for FY25. New spending in column J of 1.934 million from the general fund, and in column M, 2.004 million of new spending from the general fund in 28-29. And that concludes MDA. So moving to Board of Animal Health, there's an operating adjustment that comes from the agency's budget bill. The bill in front of you appropriates $250,000 higher each biennium than the governor recommended, so for a total of $617,000 from the general fund in 26-27 and $742,000 in 28-29 from the general fund. And that's the only change for the Board of Animal Health. For AURI, there's an operating adjustment. This also comes from the agency's budget bill of $136,000 in 26-27 and $182,000 in 28-29, and that matches the governor's recommendations. There's no new changes to the DEED's Office of Broadband Development. They receive base funding of $1.001 million each fiscal year from the general fund, but no new spending for the Office of Broadband Development. So moving on down to line 74 for the total general fund appropriation total, you can see 3 million net savings of 3 million in 24-25, net new spending total 2.687 million in 26-27 and 2.928 million in 28-29. So when you combine the 3 million and of savings with the 2.687 million of new spending, you see the budget bill's target of net savings of $313,000 to the general fund in 26-27, and new spending of 2.928 million in 28-29 from the general fund. So moving on to non-general fund expenditures, this is on page 3 of the spreadsheet. So on line 82, there's a change to the seed tonnage reporting frequency, a reduction to that frequency. This has no direct impact on the ag fund. On line 83 for the grain license fee update, all these except for the cottage food licensing comes from the governor's recommendations. So for the grain license fee update, they're estimating $900,000 of new expenditures in 26-27 and $900,000 of new expenditures in 28-29. There's identical new revenue to the ag fund as well on line 93. On line 84 for the seed potato certification statute modernization, there's a reduction of new expenditures and identical reduction of new revenue of $80,000 to the ag fund in 26-27 and $80,000 in 28-29. For the milk marketing modernization, there's new expenditures and new revenue of $10,000 to the ag fund in 26-27 and $10,000 in 28-29. For the food licensing modernization, there's new expenditures and new revenue of $5.065 million to the ag fund in 26-27 and $5.14 million in 28-29. For the cottage food licensing updates, this was the changes that Senator Putnam briefly mentioned that Senator Liskey has also been working on. There's new expenditures for staffing. This fiscal note was completed yesterday of for staffing from the ag fund of $20,000 in 26-27 and $8,000 in 28-29. On line 88, there's updates to the Rural Finance Authority. This doesn't affect the overall this doesn't have direct impacts on overall expenditures. Same for the Ag Best Management Practices program updates there. On line 97, there's just the new revenues from the changes to the cottage foods licensing that removes the exemptions. So it lowers the overall fee from $50 to $30, but it expands who all has to pay the fee. So the new licensing revenue from cottage foods is estimated to be $358,000 each fiscal year. So new revenue of $716,000 in 26-27 and $716,000 in 28-29. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my walkthrough, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wolfson. Are there questions from the committee? Still questions, but you can compliment if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Putnam. Like a lot of Minnesota farmers, your budget shows how to stretch a dollar, and I think it's an excellent one, and you can certainly count on my vote. Want to thank you, first of all, for the funding for Green Seam down where Senator Draheim and I are. They, too, know how to make a dollar go a long way. And members, that $100,000 is arguably extrapolated into several hundred thousand of investment in the Green Seam area, which is 21 counties across southern Minnesota and northern Iowa. And while $100,000 isn't a lot of money around this place, Senator Putnam, that $100,000 is making a big statement down in southern Minnesota, especially to agriculture. Also want to say, obviously, a thank you to MDA and the commissioner and his outstanding staff. Year in and year out, you guys do great work. Thank you for all of that. Thank you for continuing the work on farm safety. This goes back for Senator Draheim and I 8 years, if I'm not mistaken. And who knows how many lives you have helped save with some of the farm safety work, because they don't get in those accidents and they don't have those tragedies, so they can't call you to say, thanks for saving that, but they are out there and you have saved lives with that. And then finally, downward from pork production is a big deal. So the choice you made in the Board of Animal Health, really appreciated, and like some of this other stuff, is going to make Minnesota taxpayer dollars go a long way. Then, Mr. Chair, a point of privilege is I would like to say turkey lasers and turkey lasers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair. I first want to thank you for working on the bill. I know your target was less than nothing, so thank you. I didn't see any lab-grown meat language in your bill. Is that coming on the floor?
Senator Putnam.
Mr. Chair, Senator Draheim, if you bring it, it likely will be coming on the floor.
Stay tuned. Chair, is it appropriate to do amendments now?
Before we start with amendments, I'd like to hear from Commissioner Peterson.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome to the committee, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair and members, Tom Peterson, Commissioner, Minnesota Department of Agriculture. I'll be very brief. I just want to say I appreciate the work that we do with Chair Putnam, Lead Westrom, and the rest of the committee in putting together a bill. As folks say, we understand the financial situation the state's in, and we'd always love to have a positive target, and there's so many things that we could do with agriculture and so many needs to address. But I appreciate the creativity in using those dollars to address the needs that we see in the state right now, as Senator Putnam mentioned, with farm income being the lowest it's been in the 2000s at just around $22,000 in 2024, and a lot of pressures facing us right now. The budget bill that Chair Putnam put together includes many of the governor's priorities, including operating adjustments, which is critical to helping our agency do the things that we need to do to serve Minnesotans, but also the dollars put into our emergency account as we work closely on avian influenza right now. And as Minnesota being #1 in turkeys, #2 in pork production, in the top 10 in livestock and dairy cattle, this is a big concern. And so as we look at things that have happened in the last year on this, as it has avian influenza has gone from poultry into dairy cattle and into humans, that we're extremely prepared as Minnesota is, and we thank the legislature for the support that they've given us in the past. The dollars also include provisions that help our agency operate better and serve Minnesotans, as I said. But there's also things that are included in this, as Chair Putnam talked about, whether it's addressing wolf and livestock grants and the protect grants, farm safety, and many other things. One other piece that's in here too is a smaller piece that creates a local food purchasing program. Mr. Chair and committee members, right now we talked about cutting urban ag grants. That's in this bill, but and soil health equipment grants is another piece in here. A lot of our federal funding is really in flux. You may have seen where every hour, minute, day, some of our grants are released, some are reduced, and we're balancing those issues. So like on the urban ag, we've been able to get some of our urban ag grants opened up at the federal level, and same with our climate smart or equipment grants. On the flip side, we've had our local food. You may have seen we had an $18 million grant canceled to the department, which served our farm to school program, which the Senator Putnam addresses in this, but also our local food purchasing program, which bought food from farmers, local and a lot of our newer farmers, and then that food went to the food banks. And so this is an important piece that we're going to have to continue to adapt to within our agency. And so with that, I just appreciate the work being done on this. We look forward to continuing to work on this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Questions for the Commissioner, Senator Draheim, then Senator Putnam. There are lots of them. Okay.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, and thank you and your staff for your time on a couple of issues that we're working on. I do appreciate it. But the main thing I wanted to say was thank you for the cottage food, I guess, peace in the valley, we'll call it, and the work from your team on that. I think it's long overdue. I'm glad to see that. It seems like most people are very happy with the outcome, so thank you.
Thank you. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to reiterate what Senator Draheim just said, and to the cottage food people that were here yesterday, you bringing treats to the Jobs Committee. Boy, they sure know how to influence votes around here. Actually, Commissioner, I was interested in the change item on the grain licensing fee, $900,000. There was, as Mr. Olson said, there was additional tax collection and then additional expenditure, and that seems like a lot. And hoping you can explain, not sitting on the Agricultural Committee, If you can explain the rationale behind that and how you're going to be using that, what benefits we expect to see.
Mr. Chair. First, I just wanted to mention too on the cottage food piece, since I've been commissioner, we've gone from 4,000 cottage food licenses to over 10,000. And so when you look at in all of your districts, people that are making pickles or cupcakes and all these different things, that business has really picked up and really improved. So I really appreciate the work of many senators on that. On the grain licensing fee, hardest thing for me too is, as commissioner and everything, and working with so many farmers is to raise any fee or to look at what is the cost of, doing business for our state. But the fact of the matter is this program and these fees have not been updated for 20 years, and that our division has been running a deficit on the services that we provide, our elevators, our farmers, the surety that we provide our farmers that the grain in the bins is the grain that is said is in the bins. And so we have had issues with that. And so inspections are critical as we go forward. And so as we look at that and we continue to reduce as costs go up within the agency or other pieces, we've scrambled, we've made sacrifices, reduced staff, done what we can, but we continue to run a deficit in that program. We don't have general fund dollars, we don't have pieces that help serve that community. And so that is the piece I feel as commissioner to say, here is a reasonable fee. In this fee, some elevators would pay more in this updated. The smaller to medium size would probably pay less. Some of the bigger elevators will probably pay more. And again, I think it's an important discussion to have, and not one that I bring lightly, because we understand, that what that cost is put forward. But that's my, explanation for bringing that forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that, Commissioner. And I certainly understand some of the rationale behind it. What I'm starting to hear, and maybe more, from my work on the job side, is that some of these larger elevators are going to be taking a significant increase. I think some of them described it as massive, and being out, especially those in western Minnesota, I'm afraid it's not hard for them to skip over a state line and avoid the fee altogether. So I hope that's something that we can continue to look at and talk about, because I would hate to lose those businesses. They're so important to our small communities out in western Minnesota that maybe have other options, and we need to make sure that we're keeping those jobs and those efforts right here, because quite honestly, they come up to my area then and they ship out of the ports of Savage. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for the commissioner? If not, thank you very much for that. And I'll note, and I appreciate Senator Putnam, you did include operating adjustments in the bill to help the agency function, and I appreciate that. We get to amendments. I believe you have 3 of them in the packet sent for A37. Is that yours?
I do, Mr. Chair. The A37 amendment is technical.
Can you, Mr. Olofsson, want to comment on it briefly?
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, members, the A37 amendment is technical. Lines 1.2 through 1.5 just removes duplicative base setting language that's not necessary. Lines 1.6 through 1.29 just uses correct forecasting language for transfers, so that transfers, this is after discussions with MMB, just so that transfers are forecasted and not just automatically ongoing in the base. And then lines 1.30 through 1.32, that just clarifies that an aspect for the beginning farmer, reporting on the beginning farmer's tax credit relating to farmers experiencing limited land access, that only is effective for reports after December 31st, 2026. And that comes from a request from MDA. So walks through the A37 amendment.
Thank you. And Mr. Nauman, can you comment on the bulk of the language, the new type of language we have here?
Mr. Chair and members, I'd be happy to do that. So my reference point here is lines 1.6 through 1.28. This is the first time members have seen language of this type. It's a residual of the budget rules conversation that you all had at the beginning of session, in which those budget rules are effectively separating appropriations and transfers and treating them differently. And so what this language is doing is when a omnibus bill chooses to establish essentially an ongoing transfer, and the budget rules specify that transfers are one time unless stated otherwise, there is separate language that guides what MMB will do in the future when they set the base for that transfer 2 years from now. So it's a little bit of some artful drafting. This is guidance. Senate staff have worked with MMB to figure out the proper mechanism so that MMB has the authority to make that kind of base setting, if you will, in the transfer world. So this language, I'm just dwelling on it a little bit here because this is the kind of language on transfers that the committee will begin to see throughout omnibus bills.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Senator Friends, will you move the A37 technical amendment?
So moved.
Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Senator Putnam, you also have the A39, I believe.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the A39 amendment is about cooperative development grants. It amends the cooperative development grant appropriation with it agreed to be an up to amount to allow MDA to use the funds for other purposes under Agri if there aren't enough requests for the appropriated funds.
Is there, Senator Friends, will you move the A39 as well?
Senator Marty, I move the A39.
Is there discussion on the amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. And one final one, I think you have a A42 amendment?
We do, Mr. Chair. The A42 amendment is also essentially technical. We'll have Mr. Olafson describe it if you don't mind.
Mr. Olafson.
Mr. Chair, members, the A42 amendment just simply cleans up the grain licensing fee section of the bill. It basically just clarifies, it moves the examination fee that down to the other part where the other examination fees are. So it just moves the language that the licensed location with no grain bin capacity must be charged a $350 exam fee. So it moves it to the other list of things relating to exam fees. And it clarifies the examination fee is in addition to the licensing fee. So purely technical.
Senator Friends moves the A42 amendment. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Senator Draheim, I believe you have some amendments.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you once again, Senator Putnam, for the discussion. I would like to bring up the A41.
I believe it's in packets.
To the A41?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This is a constituent issue that happened in my district where there was a company hired to spray weeds that kind of abused the rules. And part of the solution moving forward is in this amendment. And it's kind of a silly little thing, but I think it's really important, and it was really important to my constituents. So what happened, they have a daughter that's in a coma, and she's really sensitive to chemicals. And they try to get information, access to pesticide application information, so they could find out what was used, how much, volume, whatnot. And when you go to the doctor to get a note or call them, a lot of times it's hard to see a doctor, a licensed physician. So in statute, the department has to follow statute. So, you know, it talks about a physician or a veterinarian. And what I wanted to do was expand it to a physician assistant or a nurse practitioner. So just to release that paperwork, really specific, hardly ever used. So I appreciate the commissioner and his staff working with me. Hopefully we'll have some more items to fix some other issues with this situation, heartbreaking situation. But I do think this was something simple. So Senator Putnam, thank you for helping me with this.
Thank you. Any discussion on the Draheim 841 amendment? Senator Putnam?
Mr. Chair, I just want to say I consider this amendment friendly, commonsensical, and evidence of Senator Draheim's excellent advocacy for his neighbors.
And in lots of parts of the state, physician assistants and nurse practitioners are often the ones you see in every part of the state. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the 841 amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevailed. Senator Draheim.
Thank you. You know, the next one that I have is the A40. And I think Senator Howe handed out some constituent letters from people in his district. And I don't know if Senator Howe, you want to talk to them real quick, if that's okay, Chair?
Yeah, that's fine. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And they're not actually in my district. They're actually, I believe, most of them in Senator Dames's district. But my connection to it is in this letter that you've seen from Laura Musterman. She was one of my soldiers on my first deployment. And now she's a fourth-generation farmer. And this letter, I need to direct your attention to it because she wants to explain here how this affects her, these grain fees, and how this directly affects the farmer. Because most of these farmers, as she says in here, sell their grain to cooperatives. Many of these cooperatives are owned by the farmers. So if the cooperative it makes a profit, they normally get a dividend check from that. She says in here for the last few years, they haven't got a dividend check. The cooperative hasn't made any money. So now we're going to add this fee onto those cooperatives and increase that, which means these farmers are going to get less of a check. It'll be even longer before they get a check. And right now, she makes the statement in the last paragraph there is no money in grain now, right now, and all who handle it know it. Now, they market their grain, as it says in the first couple of sentences on the second paragraph, their grain bushels down to the 1/4 cent. That's not much of a margin, folks. So I think we need to really take a hard look at this to make sure. I know her uncle, he went to get his operating loan this spring and was turned down by the bank. So he had to sell some of his land to get the money to put seed in the ground. That's how dedicated these folks are to being out there and work. And that was a family farm that had been there for 4 generations, and they had to sell some of that property, which was heartbreaking for them. So that's why I'm speaking here. I'd like you to take a good look at these letters from the grain companies and those cooperatives. It's imperative that we take a look at this because the amount of jump in the fees for these grain handlers is enormous. And so that's why I'm speaking now in support of the Draheim amendment to actually limit this so they can actually build this into their forecast. And a lot of this stuff, they sell on futures. So a lot of this grain is already marketed and already locked in. And now we're going to increase their fees, which means if they would have known that ahead of time, they could have adjusted. So that's why I'm in support of the Draheim amendment, and I hope you would be too. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Putnam on the A40.
Mr. Chair, Senator Graham, Senator Howe, thank you for the conversation. I think that Commissioner Peterson actually did a pretty good job talking about the rationale for some of these changes in fees. Things are more expensive now than they were 2 weeks ago. 20 years is a long time. And in terms of the cost that it requires MDA to fulfill these services and do the work and to do these inspections, it's more than appropriate that they have the resources to be able to do that. And I will add that this money is not going, it's going to Tom. He's not spending it on fancy suits and lobster dinners. He's spending it on doing the job of making sure that folks who farm have the resources and the help to do what it is that they need to do. And I will also add what Commissioner Peterson said, that for small elevators, the fees are probably going to go down, and they're more likely to go up on the bigger ones. So that would be my interpretation of this amendment, Senator Marty, Mr. Chair, and I am not in favor of it.
Thank you. Senator Dames on the amendment.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing the bill forward, Senator Putnam. Truly do appreciate it. I think sometimes we do not correlate how closely agriculture, the farm economy itself, is tied to all these other things. And as we all know, the farm economy is in dire straits right now. And I'm not saying that there isn't a fee increase needed, but I'm not so sure this is the time to be doing it. When we look at these letters, and they're pretty representative of many of our districts, especially a lot of these letters infect my district. And it really gives us an insight of what's going on at this point with agriculture, with the marketing and of agriculture, which these co-ops and these individual-owned elevators, by the way, which many of the individual-owned elevators are struggling and have disappeared over the years. And so I really hope that we could take a look at this and see if there's some way we can work something out. This is going to be a tough move for many of these elevators, especially the independent ones. I understand some of the smaller elevators, the dollars will probably go down, but I also understand in my district there's a lot of co-ops, and those dollars, in my case, many of those dollars won't go down, and it does affect the dividends of the farm. So, and in the years past when things were going real well, those dividends were important, but not that important as they are today. Today, those dividends are very important because it does mean the possibility of the change on the bottom line to red from black to red, or red to black. It also, in many cases, those dividends are helping support the farmers being accepted by the local banks to get farm loans. So I hope we can take a look at this and see if there's some way we can prolong this a ways so here we can kind of help out at this point in time. Some point maybe we have to do this, but I think it's a little strong medicine right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Draheim, one more comment on the A40 amendment.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the discussion. You know, the 20 years is a long time to have the fees not adjusted. I get that. And my amendment isn't stopping those fee increases. It's, I'll just say, slow rolling the fees. And, you know, as what was discussed with my colleagues, most of the elevators are farmer-owned. They're farm co-ops. So no matter if you have 200 acres or 2,000 acres, you bring your grain into the local elevator. I do have some big grain buyers in my district, you know, part of the 7 counties. Senator French does too. As mentioned, we're talking of fractions of pennies for margins, fractions. And I think as a business person, I look at it, okay, here, I think the enactive date of this proposal is July. So if we get our work done, which hopefully we will, Majority Leader, we'll be on time, and this will be enacted in July, is my understanding. And you're affecting almost a third of the state economy is agriculture, and a lot of this grain is forward contracted. And I know that was mentioned before, but just so everybody understands, it isn't uncommon for elevators and farmers to work out an agreement to sell that grain 12 months and as far as 2 years in advance. So I understand the commissioners need to adjust fees. I don't like it, but I understand it. So what I am proposing is we just slow roll that increase. So it's 150% of the previous year. That's what I'm suggesting. Now, do we need to adjust the 150? I would love to move it lower, but I'm sure the commissioner would like to move that higher. But I think we have to find some kind of compromise so it isn't all at once. In the grand scheme of things, this isn't a lot of money, but it does affect a large percentage of the population. So I think it's a reasonable amendment. I think it's a solution where I think we both can win. The agency will get the extra resources it needs to do the job that we have put onto them through our laws. So I'm just looking for support to trying to figure out a happy medium between the fee increases, which no one wants to see fee increases, but I understand why. 20 years, long time. But it's a measured increase so everybody can plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any, Senator Friends?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Senator Draheim. Senator Draheim, is there any formal input from groups typically representing farmers before the legislature, Farm Bureau, Minnesota Farmers Union on the amendment?
Good question, Senator Friends. Thank you, Chair. No, I did not seek any. I just heard people that don't want it. You know, so most of the feedback that I have gotten is not to have it at all. And I'm a business guy. I know expenses have gone up a lot in 20 years. I understand that. So I'm not arguing on the why we need to increase fees. It's just how we are doing it. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Senator Draheim. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I understand the slow rolling concept, and I have some farmers in my district who I think would like that concept too. I think for me to put up a yes vote for the amendment, I'd want a little more formal support from Farm Bureau and Farmers Union, which Senator Draheim, maybe that can be developed over the next month or so, and happy to work with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the A40 amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion does not prevail. Further amendments, further discussion. Senator Dames. The A34 amendment is not in the packets. It's going to be distributed right now.
I do, that's a champion campaign.
Second harvest.
While it's being distributed, most members have the amendment. Maybe you can go ahead and start describing the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this amendment, when we had the bill in Ag Committee, there was an amendment to state that Second Harvest could not use the money that they received from the state for administrative reasons. There were some parts of the bill that were missed in that amendment, so this amendment clarifies that none of the money that Second Harvest receives from the state government would be able to use for administrative expenses. And so on page 14, line 25, it deletes everything after process and inserts a semicolon. Page 14 of the bill, it deletes lines 26 and 27. Page 15, after line 5, it inserts Second Harvest may not use any portion of the appropriations under paragraph K each year for administrative expenses. And the bill, the amendment, the original amendment did pass out of the Ag Committee without any issues.
Senator Putnam on the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Senator Daines, for bringing this up, but also for sharing with me beforehand, so we had a chance to talk about it a little bit. This is curious in some ways. I think it's procedurally odd to focus on one specific organization with this concern about administrative fees. I understand why that's happening, and I also think that, as we've discussed before, this is in principle not a horrible idea, but it's something that we're still working on, still in conversations with Second Harvest. And those conversations can occur with Senator Daines as well. So I think that this is a work in progress.
So on to this specific amendment, are you supporting, opposing, you're not sure, what are you encouraging?
Mr. Chair, let's go with neutral.
Okay,
Again, Mr. Chair, if I may, in the context of this is something we can still keep talking about. I'm not sure that this alteration is necessary, given the original language that has already been put in the bill. But again, I'm committed to continuing to talk about it.
further discussion on the A34 amendment. Senator Dames.
Mr. Chair, as long as we can work on this before this bill comes to the floor, at this point, I'll withdraw the amendment.
Senator Dames withdraws A34. Are there other amendments? If not, discussion on the bill. Senator Howell, you had asked to speak to the bill, or was that something you've already talked about? Okay. The further discussion on Senate File 2458. If not, Senator Putnam will ask comments on it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members, for your engagement with important issues. I am just going to say one more time, we were dealing with a negative target, as you are all aware. And as I think what Senator Graham mentioned earlier, Minnesota agriculture is 1/3 of our economy, and 1 in 5 jobs in the state of Minnesota is agriculture related. And yet, in our current budgetary context, we have less than 0.25% of the state budget. I just thought I'd bring that up in case anyone who's involved in budget target setting happens to be in the room. Just a certain appeal for greater support for Minnesota agriculture, but I appreciate the support in the form of the lively conversation we've had this morning. Thank you again, Mr. Chair and members.
Thank you, Senator Putnam. Senator Friends moves that Senate File 2458 as amended be recommended to pass. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Thank you, Senator Putnam, and welcome back to the committee, Senator Putnam.
I've missed you terribly, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. What we have before you now is the Omnibus bill for the Departments of Veterans and Military Affairs. We had a $41 million target and a $53 million target in the tails. The bill itself is fairly straightforward. The bulk of our resources went directly to veterans' homes. And those of you may remember a couple years ago, we built some new veterans' homes. But unfortunately, they're all operating woefully under capacity due to our lack of infrastructure around them. So the bulk of our budget is going directly in that place to make sure that veterans have homes and care that they need. I think we all agree that's incredibly important. The one budgetary move that we made, just for clarity's sake, is we did do a little bit of switching around some resources in regards to the Veterans Resiliency Project. Our understanding from our friends at MDVA is that program is undersubscribed and over-resourced. So we deviated a small amount of money from that program to support the veteran service officers in their technical coordination focused on women vets, suicide prevention, and justice-involved veterans. Those are the kind of high-level things that we've done on policy. We increased the state bonding power for state armories from $15 million to $45 million. We clarified about education assistance for spouses of deceased veterans, and we established a process for Gold and Blue Star family plaque at no cost to the state, and we did a way overdue intervention trying to rein back those who are actively exploiting our veterans by taking advantage of their benefits by requiring the accreditation of claim sharks. That's the bill as a whole. Mr. Olson might want to talk through some of the math.
Thank you, Mr. Erickson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's not the first time, Mr. Chair. So members of Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I'll quick walk through the two spreadsheets you should have in front of you. The first is a much more detailed that you can recognize by the much smaller font size that goes into a great deal of detail about the budget activities and such at the Department of Military Affairs and Veterans Affairs. I'll leave you to look that over yourself and be happy to answer any questions you might have on it, but let me just orient you to the three blocks that represent the budget or the current biennium that we're in, fiscal years 24 and 25 on the left, the budget biennium 26 and 27 that's in the middle, and then the tails biennium in the farthest box to the right, fiscal 28 and 29. And like I say, if there are questions, happy to take those. But I think for the committee's purposes, it will be easiest to look at the change items spreadsheet with the much larger font and showing only the changes from base. As Senator Putnam describes, the committee passed out a bill with operating adjustments for the Department of Military Affairs on line 6 there of $600,000 for the budget biennium and $800,000 in the tails, and then operating adjustments at the Department of Veterans Affairs for programs and services of $1,189,000 with $1,592,000 in the tails, and a larger operating adjustment for the veterans' homes of $39.17 million in the current biennium and $51.35 million in the tails. The switch that Senator Putnam referenced from some underspending in the Veterans Resilience Project that was found is shown on line 15 and shows $60,000 in savings each year, which has been repurposed for those technical assistance coordinator grants on line 16, which was Senator Putnam Senate File 1452. On line 18, you can see the committee targets of $40.958 million and $53.744 million, and the spending in this bill does indeed show fealty to those targets.
Is there any questions from the committee for Mr. Erickson? If not, I'm wondering if we have either Deputy Commissioner Johnson wants to comment. You don't need to, but you're welcome to the committee if you want to comment on it. And as well, from Military Affairs, Lieutenant Colonel Eric Athman. Not here, okay. Well, welcome to the committee, Deputy Commissioner.
Chair and members, good morning. My name is Ben Johnson. I'm Deputy Commissioner for Programs and Services with the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs. Commissioner Lindsay is otherwise engaged this morning, extends his regrets for not being here. I just wanted to say thank you for your consideration of this bill today, understanding the restrained nature of the current budgets. Thank you to Senator Putnam for including most of our requests at the governor's recommended levels. Happy to answer any specific questions about the change items, but looking forward to moving this through to the floor, sir.
Any questions for Commissioner Johnson? If not, thank you very much. Lieutenant Colonel. Welcome to the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I want to thank you today for having us come to testify on behalf of the bill. There's some really great things in the bill. Our extended authority for the Minnesota State Armory Building Commission really helps set us up for success in the future with the long-term growth, with future armory builds. Also, some of the changes to include some of our operating increases really does help the agency be able to absorb the higher costs of salaries over time. A few things weren't included. A few things that we really, really wanted to help get after, which includes our state incentives appropriation. Every couple of years, we come back and ask for an operational increase to that. Many years, we do get that increase, and in the tails, it's always kind of brought back down to the $12.114 million. That amount is not sufficient to be able to continue to offer state tuition reimbursement to the members of the Minnesota National Guard. As everyone knows, the costs of tuition have gone up year over year over year, and that just really is a hard value proposition for us to continue to offer state tuition reimbursement at the levels that we have. The number one priority of the Adjutant General, who sends us regrets for not being able to be here today, is the incentives appropriation that we get. That is the gold standard for which separates us from the Army Reserve, the Air Reserve, and the active component. Our ability to recruit, train, and keep service members is in that appropriation. Those funds are critically important to the agency. And you know, we get what we will get when everything's said and done, and we'll have to make some hard decisions based upon what makes it. Two other programs that were not included that were started in the last biennium are the C3, which is the Cyber Coordination Cell. That's a team of 4 individuals that goes out and does proactive cyber assessments across the state and internally in state government. They help interface federal, state, and local resources and really are an integrator across the force. And then the last program that we had that wasn't supported in the budget bill this year was the Holistic Health and Fitness bill, which, thank you to the legislature, funded the Army Combat Fitness Center that's going to be built in the Arden Hills area at our training site. That team helps to ensure that individuals that are hurt, get injured, have a rehabilitative path, and help us capitalize on keeping individual members in long-term, long duration. It really helps ensure the investment that we make in those service members from day one. So with that, I do want to thank Senator Putnam and Chair Marty for having us here today. I appreciate everything that the team is able to offer, and I look forward to continuing to work with anybody that is able to help us scratch the itch for additional funds.
Thank you. Could you identify yourself for the record, Lieutenant Colonel Athman?
I'm sorry, Chair Marty, I should have started with that. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Eric Athman, Director of Operations for the Department of Military Affairs.
Thank you. Are there any questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you, members.
Senator, well, let me ask amendments.
Mr. Chair, if I may first, before we begin the amendments, I'd like to thank Colonel Athman and General Menke for being very thoughtful, considerate, and understanding with their frustration around their budget target, and to add that I share it and wish that we could do more.
Thank you. I'm told that Senator Mohammed has an A12 amendment, and I believe it's posted, but not, it needs to be distributed.
Still don't want me forgetting your name.
Sir Mohammed, while they're finishing distribution, perhaps you can go ahead and explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am presenting this amendment for Senator Hurt, and he'd be able to answer some of the detailed questions. This amendment is to basically add the veterans of the Sikh War in Laos for them to be eligible for the benefits and the privileges of the other veterans. He is here with us. I know that there is some costs, and there's been conversations with the agency on what that looks like and whether they can take on that or what we will do. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Mohammed. And Deputy Commissioner Johnson, would you be able to, wanted to know about the fiscal impacts of this and so on.
Chair and members, again, Ben Johnson, Deputy Commissioner for Programs and Services, Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs. To the amendment as drafted, I assume it's the same one that we've been speaking about. Roger that. So within the amendment, this is something that the other chamber has been working diligently on. We've been working with Senator Hur as well and Senator Putnam to develop something workable to recognize the service of the Hmong SGU and irregulars serving out of Laos during the secret war during the Vietnam era. In particular, for the purposes of the Finance Committee, starting at line 1.25 and running through that section, and into page 2 through 2.2. We have done an analysis of the House language, which most of this is copied from. And the evaluation is relatively straightforward. In particular, the burial costs, 197.236, which is on line, starting on line 1.28 for state veteran cemeteries. We estimate that there is a cost associated with that. provided that the NCAA, National Cemetery Administration, does an evaluation, we would get some reimbursement as a result of a recent federal law change, the NDAA of 2024, I believe. So we estimate a relatively minimal cost associated with interments at our veteran cemeteries. The estimate is something that we could absorb. Regarding the honor guards, on line 1.28, that is a stipend that is available to members who secure private burials. Again, the cost is relatively minimal given the annual expected number of interments for this population. The only relatively large cost associated with this language is in this grave markers on line 1.28, so section 197.23. This is a significant cost to the agency. However, it is a permissible cost so long as there are funds available. It is something that we can accommodate, and typically securing the bronze grave markers has been a challenge. So overall, our estimated cost for the burials and honor guards is again absorbable at about $30,000 per year. We can work with that. The grave markers is a little bit of a concern, but so long as the underlying statute doesn't change, it is as funds are available. It's something that we can be flexible with. The only other area that I do need to comment on is starting on line 1.26, this reference through veteran designation on driver's licenses. This is a new ad that we haven't evaluated. I don't know if Department of Public Safety evaluated it. I don't know what the costs are associated with that. So it's something to consider. And then finally, the language that ran through the other chamber included an appropriation for the administration of this task force. We estimate approximately 1 FTE, or about $118,000. They included that in their budget. It is an area of concern for us. Overall, I won't get into the policy portions of this, but having the support available for a staff member to be managing this task force that is stood up is an area that we would like to consider as well. So overall, it's something that we can support. Again, I'll leave the policy components out at this time, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak and answer any questions that might come up.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Mr. Erickson, could you comment on anything on the driver's license?
I can certainly try, Mr. Chair. We have some late-breaking news on that front, and it sounds like DPS thinks that the costs of doing this are either negligible or no cost at all. There is probably a slight revenue to the account because veterans who do seek this designation pay a required fee, but it is a non-general fund account and is probably relatively small.
And Senator Hamid, or maybe we have Senator Hurd come up perhaps on the task force. It does appoint legislators to the task force. I'm told by Senate Counsel that we may need to remove that because the bill did not go through, is it Rules Committee or whoever, whenever we have appointments for that? Senator Mohammed, or maybe I should ask, Senator Hurd's been involved in this heavily. Senator Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did talk to Senator Hurd, and he is comfortable with taking that part out, so it doesn't have to go to rules.
So Senator Mohammed would incorporate in her amendment to strike lines 24 and 25 on page 2 and to incorporate the other changes? You'd incorporate that in your amendment?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I think you may also want to delete 13 on line 2.10 and insert 9.
Thank you. She'll incorporate that into her amendment as well. Is there a discussion on the amendment as with those changes incorporated? Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make the committee aware that when you establish a task force, then it has to be reviewed by state and local government.
I'm told they've already looked at this. Senator.
They've already looked at it.
Senator Draheim on the amendment.
Thank you. Just on the finance piece, could we get a total of what the fiscal impact is of this with, I know we kind of went through different pieces and potentials, but do we have a, any time I've ever tried to do a task force, it's $200,000. I sit on various committees over the years And so I'd just like to recap on what that cost is.
Mr. Erickson.
Mr. Chair and Senator Draheim, I think I've seen that number quite frequently too. In this case, the members of the task force serve without compensation or per diem. That's on lines 3.4 to 3.5 of the amendment. So I think that limits some of the cost of this somewhat. The other portion of those task forces that can often cost money is whether there's additional staff or who's providing the administrative support for this. In the absence of a formal fiscal note on this, I would turn to Mr. Johnson for comment on how MDVA might envision administering their responsibilities with respect to the task force.
Commissioner on that.
Chair, Senator, our estimate is that this would be a supervisory level position for at least the year that it exists, and the estimate on that was about 118,000, give or take. So that's an area that if we had a dedicated staff member, at least for the year that the task force is stood up to make these recommendations, then that's something that we would need to see. And again, the other chamber included that in the budget, understanding that it's not in this bill, but just for your awareness, sir.
Yes. Right. So, in other words, that would be a cost you can't internalize, but you're thinking that in the negotiations in the conference committee and so on, the House had provided some funding for that?
That's correct, sir.
Senator Draheim.
So I'm just trying to get the big high picture level. Senator Putnam, you're saying that there's going to be no fiscal cost to this as drafted in our spreadsheet?
Mr. Chair?
Senator, Mr. Nauman, please.
Mr. Chair and Senator Draheim, if you'll permit me, what I heard was that paragraph C contains costs for the various aspects listed in that paragraph. I heard the agency say that they felt, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, Commissioner, and you tell me where I get this wrong. I heard there were costs associated with those provisions. However, I thought I heard the agency say that those could be absorbed by the agency if there were a fiscal note to run on this language, which I don't believe we have. Then I also heard a cost associated with Section 11, and that was quantified at about 118. I did not hear costs associated with paragraph C. I heard one number of 30,000, but that was about as far as we went.
Commissioner.
Chair Marty, Mr. Nauman is correct. We can absorb the annual 30,000 associated with the two areas that are related to our memorial affairs teams. The grave markers is permissive, so that is something that we don't have to have funding for. It's always underfunded, and it's a challenge generally, but provided that we're not changing the underlying statute, there's no cost there. And then the estimate, there was a fiscal note done on one portion of it originally, but this is a significant departure from that. So the 118,000 that's not included here is something that we would need to see, we would like to see at some point to administer the task force as described.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just looking at the House companion on this, which lists a $3.2 million cost in the first biennium, a $5.5 million cost in the second biennium, which would seem to blow through our target that we've given the Vets Committee so far. And I'm just, what I'm hearing is all that cost can be absorbed, or there are significant differences between this amendment and what the House has scored their fiscal note on?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Chair Marty, Senator Pratt, that fiscal note was based on the original language that was crafted, which included an expansion of all veterans benefits to the eligible members of the SGU community. That's the fiscal note for the full. This amendment creates a standalone section of veterans definition in law and limits the eligibility to those benefits to the section this C portion. Significantly reducing the costs. The authors in both chambers worked with us to understand what the costs would look like, and so that number is correct for the original language. but what was amended into the House's Omnibus State Veterans and Military Affairs Bill yesterday included language significantly similar, relatively speaking, to this. Some minor tweaks in terms of policy, but in terms of cost, what I've testified to today is our best estimates.
Further discussion, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Senator Marty, Chair Marty, and Assistant Commissioner Johnson. So what are the numbers for these among veterans? Because that's what we're dealing with. We separated out the Laotians, the Vietnamese, everyone else. We're just dealing with the Hmong veterans, correct?
Chair Marty, Senator, this language targets both the SGU or Hmong as well as irregular forces operating from the base in Laos. So it is somewhat permissive, but my understanding is that the authors were interested primarily in the Hmong SGU members, sir.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that's my concern. We're separating out now. Do we know the numbers of these, that we're looking at?
Chair Marty, Senator, thank you for asking. The fiscal note that we were utilizing was in the range between 900 and 1,000 resident SGU members who would potentially be eligible for this status. We don't have a hard number in that community. It's not a community that we've directly served in the past, sir.
Mr. Chair, follow up. So how many of those 1,000 do you expect to actually apply and service in our cemeteries?
Chair Marty, Senator, we anticipated approximately 17 participant SGUs or their surviving spouses per year. My understanding is that the community has a very different approach to interments or burials and memorials, so not that many would be seeking interment in state or federal veteran cemeteries. The numbers that we've crafted are based on that assumption, so approximately 17 per year, sir.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Chair Marty. And here's my concern to the committee, is that we're doing this for a very small segment. We're not taking in all of our allies. That's one. We're going to really upset some other parts of our communities of this state to do this without encompassing everyone. If this is what we want to do in this state, and I'm just one voice. But the bigger concern I have is when we tried to do this similar thing for National Guard, Minnesota National Guard soldiers that actually swore an oath and actually put on the uniform of our country, we deny these benefits to them because they didn't go overseas. They didn't spend 181 days. They don't qualify as veterans. So they don't get these benefits. But yet, we're going to extend this to other folks that fought with us in a different uniform, and I'm not denying what their service valued. I value their service, but if we're going to do this for them, should we not take care of our own citizens that volunteer in the Minnesota National Guard? But we don't. So I really have a hard time offering this to them when we don't take care of our own folks that have volunteered to serve our country in uniform. And that is the rub that I currently have. Those are my issues. We are separating a very small select group to take care of in our allies, and then we don't take care of our own soldiers, and we're taking care of these people that may deserve it, not arguing that, but so do our National Guard soldiers. And we have chosen not to take care of them. And I can't support this bill, this amendment, ahead of taking care of our National Guard soldiers, which I've tried to take care of. And it was killed by fiscal note. Oh my God, it was going to take 18 FTEs to take care of those people. And I understand there's probably more National Guard soldiers than 1,000. Right, I got it. But before I can vote for this, I got to take care of my Minnesota National Guard soldiers, and that's where I stand on this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Frantz.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Mohammed. I'm a yes vote on this amendment, and I want to thank you, Senator Putnam, for being the chair, and I want to thank Senator Herr. I've said this before on the record. My most memorable moment in my service in the Senate was when Senator Herr brought the original Special Guerrilla Unit motion to the floor, and he fought. And we eventually were able to support that and recognize the contribution of these Minnesotans for fighting alongside us. Senator Herr, thank you again for honoring these members. As someone whose father-in-law is buried at Fort Snelling, I think this is the right thing to do. I will say to my colleague, Senator Howe, you have my promise to work with you if there are National Guard benefit issues. I'm not familiar with them. I did not serve. But I see this as an opportunity to support the Special Guerrilla Unit members and send a little bit of a signal of unity. And if there are other benefits available to other veterans, I'm looking forward to supporting those too. But that will not cause me to be a no vote on this amendment. And I would urge members of both parties to consider what's the message here. We're trying to include, we're trying to recognize service. And these are benefits that are available for people who literally fought and many saw death alongside them, alongside the United States Armed Forces. For that, Senator Mohammed, you have certainly earned a yes vote from this senator. And thank you again, Senator Herr. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Senator Frantz. I also do support the recognition of the SGU soldiers. I think they did provide a valuable support. But there are other soldiers who were also allowed in the U.S. because they were allies with us in the Vietnam War, and they're the Laos and the Vietnamese and the Cambodians. So I do feel that they, sometimes when we do special legislation, they do feel left out. And I do feel bad for them because I think they also deserve recognition.
Thank you. And I wanted to say, I wanted to stress that, I mean, Senator Howe, most of these veterans are now Minnesota citizens for 40, 50 years. They, not only did they lose a lot of their partners fighting for a country they had never been to, they gave up their entire lives there. And all they're asking for is some fairly minimal things, and I agree. And I'm glad this recognizes the irregular forces as well and so on, but I think this is a step forward, and I encourage support. Senator Putnam, any last words on the A12?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Senator Howe and Senator Pappas for some of the concerns that they raised. I completely appreciate and understand them to the extent that I'm able. I do want to provide a little bit more context and say that there has been a great deal of work done in the other body on this issue, and this language here in this amendment is part of that larger conversation, and I don't expect, well, nothing's ever completely done, but I'm just trying to suggest that we are still working on this issue. It's an important one, and in my conversations with Senator Herr and others, it's clear that this really isn't about the money. This is about acknowledgement of sacrifice, and for that reason, I support the amendment.
On the A12, Senator Drahan.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go out of order. Sorry, Senator Putnam. Thank you, Chair. Senator Pappas had my thoughts too with the other communities that help fight us too. And I grew up with a lot of Hmong, and Mankato had a huge population of Hmong when I was in elementary school especially. So love the community. Great family-centered groups, but there are also other groups that fought with us there. So I don't like it when we pick winners and losers. So I appreciate the help the Hmong community had in that war, and I think we should honor them as much as we can. But if we start down this process, then we're going to have to include all the other groups too. Not to mention what Senator Howe mentioned. So I think this is a slippery slope. So I will be a no vote, and that's no disrespect to Senator Herr and your community. But I just, if we're going to do it, then we should include everybody. Thank you.
Could Senate Council restate the change that was incorporated into the amendment?
Mr. Chair and members, the changes on the A12 amendment, page 2, line 10, delete 13 and insert 9. On page 2, line 21, after the semicolon, insert and. On page 2, line 23, delete the semicolon and the word and insert a period. And on page 2, delete lines 24 and 25.
That's all been incorporated into Senator Mohammed's amendment. Senator Mohammed, on final comments on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Senator Hur for working really hard on this, and the other body. I want to thank the agency for really being thorough in this process. And as you have said, this isn't about the money, it's about the recognition and the hard fight that these people have put in to support our country. Obviously, there are many, many other folks who've been a part of that fight who we do need to recognize, and I think this is the first step of making sure that we are inclusive and we are starting to include everyone in these privileges. So thank you.
Further discussion on the Mohammed A12 amendment? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion prevails. Further discussion on the bill, further amendments.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer the A8.
A8? Senator Howell, could you restate the number?
The A8.
A8. Okay. Senator Howell has an A8 amendment, and we will get it distributed and get it posted.
Mr. Chair, I can explain the amendment. Currently, I know there's been a lot of talk that a veteran can go to any veteran service officer anywhere and get their claim submitted. Well, I will direct you to 197.0603, which says, you know, the duties of a veteran service officer, the county veteran service officer shall aid all veterans who are residents of the governmental subdivision by which the officer is employed. So they are not directed to take care of everybody. So this amendment, Mr. Chair and members, would allow any veteran to go to any county veteran service officer where he resides or a veteran service officer in the state. And that has some second and third order effects, which definitely concern me, but we've had testimony after testimony from people saying they can go to any veteran service officer in the state, which by state law really doesn't appear to be true. This would make that true, but you can tell certain counties out there provide great county veteran service officers, and they give, when they have an increase, they put more county veteran service officers out there. I know our county that I share with Senator Putnam, we have a great veteran service officer office that does fantastic work, but that's not the same for everyone. I will tell you, I personally had to take the paperwork out to a Vietnam veteran because the veteran service officer in his district wouldn't even put an app in for him because his comment was, well, he's just going to use it on drugs and alcohol anyway. So not everyone has a good veteran service officer. What this will do, it may drive some of these other veterans to veteran service officers that are already overwhelmed and cost some consternation there. But with that, I will stand for questions on the A8.
Senator Putnam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Howe, I don't want to just accept the amendment. I want to thank you for offering it. This is a good idea. I don't, again, don't just approve it. I enthusiastically support it. And thank you again, Senator Howe, for bringing it.
Further discussion on the amendment? If not, all those in favor of the Howe A8 amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. Further discussion on the bill?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Putnam, I got one question. You know, I notice on the spreadsheet that Metro Meals on Wheels grant was not carried forward. And that would actually was the piece that caused me to vote no on the last two veterans bills. But if we remember, the Veterans Affairs was supposed to submit a report on that September 1. Did we receive that report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Howe. MDVA, it does not have that information at this time.
So it was supposed to be an annual report, so there should have been one in 23 and one in 24. I don't remember that being distributed or talked about. And because the reason I bring it up is I've been trying to get with the Metro Meals on Wheels for over a year and have not been able to get with them because I've been trying to get with, take our Stearns County stand down in St. Cloud and get them to see that operation to expand it possibly, but we weren't let in the door. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, may I respond? Thank you very much for bringing that up, Senator Howe. And, a couple months ago, when we first started talking about priorities in Veterans Affairs, one of the first things that I heard about was food insecurity. And so I started having conversations, and I thought we were in a special position having my authority in the agricultural sector also to apply perhaps to ameliorate some of this problem of food insecurity among our veterans in the entire state. And some of the conversations I had with Metro Meals on Wheels, some of those resources were not, as I understand it, utilized as efficiently as one might hope. And our goal was to create a secondary program for Greater Minnesota. We wanted a Greater Minnesota Meals on Wheels program. That was our plan, but unfortunately the budget target wasn't there. So Senator Howe, I just want to say I completely agree with you on this one. I'm sorry we're having a Stearns County moment, just Senator Howe and I, but I want to just acknowledge your concern and contribute my enthusiasm.
Mr. Chair, follow up?
Senator Howe.
Thank you. And thank you for that, Senator Putnam. But here's the deal. You've got the St. Cloud Stand Down provides food for veterans in 4 counties without any governmental aid. And yet we gave $1 million to someone, and that's what was my biggest beef with this deal, and pardon the pun, but we took care of veterans in Metro, but we didn't take care of the veterans in outstate. We spent $1 million, and yet you've got a local outfit that's doing 4 counties with no government assistance at all. Huge problem for me, and I think we need to do better when we're handing out dollars to folks and look at statewide programs, because here we are picking, as Senator Ahime points out, winners and losers. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be quiet from here on out.
Thank you. Further discussion on the bill. Senator Putnam, final comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and members for your conversation. I think that this was a productive chat, and I look forward to continuing this work and doing my best to earn your support and support the Senate position as best I can. I think that this is a good and balanced bill, and again, I thank you for your input.
Thank you. And you've had excellent staff helping you. I wonder if you want to comment both on Mr. Olofsson earlier and your help today from Mr. Watson.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I've been planning my superlatives for another day, but as long as they're here, we might as well suck up to them because they're amazing. Everyone here knows that the people who do the work are the people who prepare everything for us to say. And so I'm incredibly grateful for both of the staffs that I get to work with, my personal staff, but also the staff that works in both ag and in veterans, who are as good as anyone could be at any job they could do.
Thank you. And Senator Friends will move that staff make the appropriate corrections in additions to technical corrections to make sure staff has the authority to make technical and conforming adjustments in the bill. Is there any discussion on that motion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. With that, Senator Friends moves that Senate File 1959 as amended be recommended to pass. On that motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Thank you, and with that, this committee is adjourned.